Welcome back. The Prime Minister today called on Twitter to work with the government to implement new guidelines for social networking sites. Facebook, Google, Microsoft and Yahoo are already on board to the agreement, which, as Julia Gillard explained, aims to crack down on cyberbullying and trolling. Have a listen.
It's very important that our children in this modern world understand all of the opportunities, but also the risks that can come with the new environment in which we live.
Joining us now is Simon Breheny. He's the Director of the Legal Rights Project at the Institute of Public Affairs. Simon, thank you for your time. What's your understanding of exactly what these social networking sites have agreed to cooperate on with the government, and do you think it's anything for users to be worried about?
Well, there's actually not much substance to this announcement. One of the things that struck me was that this is so much spin and really not a lot of substance. One of the things that they have agreed to, there's a list of priorities that they've agreed to, and one of those is to continue to innovate so that users are provided with a safe experience online. But obviously there's a really strong incentive for social networking sites to provide just that kind of innovation. That's what they're doing every day. Essentially, the government has just signed them up to a list of protocols which they're already doing.
I guess it is a starting point, though, to get some sort of agreement between those big companies and the government, because it is a pretty hard balance for the government to strike, isn't it? We know that cyberbullying is a very big issue for our children. The government's been under pressure to do something about it. But in terms of practically what you can do, that's where the question marks lay, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the only reasons why these companies would have signed up is because this is what they're doing. The agreement that they've signed up to is a voluntary, non-binding, cooperative agreement. It doesn't really ask anything of them, certainly not beyond what they're already doing. Facebook and Twitter, even though they haven't signed up, and other social networking sites already have complaints procedures in place. For the government to come in and tell them that that's what they need is a really kind of strange situation we've got going on here. They know that's what they need. If they didn't, if kids were bullied really severely, which sometimes they are, they would leave. They would leave in droves.
We have heard a lot about this trolling that goes on. Do you think it's actually possible to beat the trolls, or is this just part of our online world now?
Look, I mean, if you do want to try and get to the trolls, if you want to stop this kind of behaviour online, a big one-size-fits-all national policy put down by the government isn't the way to go. The way to go is to empower parents and say, parents, schools, teachers, work together with your kids to work out the best ways to solve these problems. What's really required is a tailored solution that looks at the particular issues that each school faces, and they're different from one area to another.
Where are we at now with just how some of these reforms might go and what direction they may go in the future? We know the internet filtering policy was dropped. Some people have been hoping for a sort of watered-down version of that. We've seen question marks about national security as well, in terms of how much power the government has to access to emails and our social media sites and that sort of thing. Are we still in a position where they're looking to extend those powers, or does that seem to have died off completely now?
Yeah, there are a number of really concerning proposals that have come from this government in the last 12 months. Now, the internet service providers filter has been dropped, but in its place we've got this really strange situation where Senator Conroy has said that he has the power under a really obscure provision in the legislation, which says that he can say, go to ISPs and say, this is the list of sites that you aren't allowed to allow your users to view. The problem with that explanation is, of course, that, if that was the situation, if that has always been the case, why wasn't he always using that provision? Why go down the politically more difficult path of saying, let's put in place an ISP filter? And a number of other proposals that have come out are really significant threats to freedom online and freedom of speech.
Yeah, and talking about freedom of speech, we've seen more controversy today about these anti-discrimination law proposals that we've seen. In particular, today the reports have been focusing on the Prime Minister being keen to defend religious exemptions for any laws. That's something that's outraged the Greens. They're saying today it could allow church groups to, for example, discriminate against people they might not agree with, like gay people or single mothers, and when it comes to hiring and firing and that sort of thing. Why do we actually need new anti-discrimination laws? Do you think there is anything wrong with the current set?
Well, look, I mean, the idea of consolidating laws and making them simpler, potentially having fewer pages of legislation — we have over 100,000 pages of legislation just at the Commonwealth level in this country — is quite a good goal. The problem with this particular consolidation is that not only have they consolidated 5 acts, but they've also radically overhauled the law. One of the things that they've done is that they've radically changed the definition of discrimination to include things like offensive and insulting conduct. Now, that's obviously a threshold that's far too low, and it's a threshold that should be resisted. It's something that we've resisted, and it's something that a lot of the community is resisting throughout an inquiry process that's going on now. As to whether or not church groups should be allowed to hire and fire the people that they choose, yeah, I think they should be able to. The reality is you don't want to have a situation where you're forcing people who would choose otherwise not to associate by the hand of government. That seems to me like a really bad idea. It's not something that's going to achieve a more harmonious society.
So under this proposal, what about political opinions? Would it be unlawful, for example, to offend someone based on political beliefs, and how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, well, although religion is one of the characteristics, political opinion is also one of those as well. So the legislation lists a number of characteristics on which you can't offend and insult people, and extraordinarily, political opinion is one of those that's been included. Now, this is something that seems to me to be completely inappropriate in a country that values freedom of speech, in a country that wants a robust debate to happen, in a country that values democracy. It seems to me that this is a significant overreach by Nicola Roxon, the Attorney-General, and by the Gillard government.
Well, it is still early days. It's going to be fascinating to see how that inquiry process plays out. Simon Breheny, thank you for joining us with your insights and opinions on what is such a controversial area. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
And that's all we've got time for this edition of PM Agenda. Make sure you join David Lipson in the morning. He'll be along at 8:30 Eastern Daylight Time with AM Agenda. We'll be playing that Paul Howes interview for you this evening at 8:30 PM Eastern Daylight Time. I'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Ashley Gillen.